And welcome to the Garage News. Do, 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 do. No, I don't think we'll have the bongs. Big Ben doesn't really cut it for this programme. We've got a few questions coming in that I thought I'd address quickly on film. One is, what do you use for a owner's manual, workshop manual, etc., etc.? Mainly nothing, if I'm absolutely honest. As I say, I am an enthusiastic amateur. I don't think that I'm the absolute guru on these cars, but I like tinkering. I'll work out how things work. And I've worked on for cars since I was a kid. So you have an instinct for these things. However, what do I actually have around me? I have one of these, well, two of these if I'm honest. The Jaguar XK8 Workshop manual, which sounds slightly better than it is, if I'm absolutely honest. It's something that you can usually find knocking around on eBay. And it is a mighty tome. It is many, many pages. And it does have quite a lot of good images, which is the main thing. What it doesn't have is much in the way of detail about how to fix many things. For instance, doing my brakes, I obviously had a little look at this, see if there's any good hints and tips. Not so many. It gives a torque for the slider pins that the calipers go on, but it doesn't give a torque for the carrier bolts that are going to be a much higher torque that hold the caliper onto the uprights. So I do have one of these, and it does come in two flavours. This one's called Workshop Manual, and if I just ferret around, you see they're not very well prepared, these the videos. Diagnostic and Test Manual, which again sounds an awful lot better than it is. And you go inside here, but they're more technical, if you like. CAN outputs, so what signals you should get from various modules at various times, air distribution and filtering, basically more descriptions. It's very much like the other manual, but with a few more diagrams of the wiring and some diagnostic and testing clues, but most of it says use portable diagnostic unit and refer to the user manual on that, which means you've got to have the full Jaguar kit and use that, and it'll tell you what to do. So not as useful as you would imagine, considering these things in the UK, get a couple of those. It's going to cost you, I'm guessing, £70 maybe. Not that brilliant. I have a couple of things I find very useful. Jaguar monthlies. It's kind of an album of road tests and bits and pieces, and that's great for basically pictures and images, a few bits and bobs of specs, but it's just a magazine really, and I just like it because when I'm thinking, oh, I wonder if a Mark II has that line on it. I have a little look in here, it gives me all sorts of nice clues. And this one, Jaguar Worlds, a modern sporting icon, the Jaguar XK8, is actually a very useful booklet. It's kind of limited, but in here is a lot of stories on the model and the marque, how it was developed, some road tests, but the second half has some really good articles that this magazine did on rebuilding and doing some work on an XK8. And they are just republished magazine articles, but you know, changing bushes on your suspension, how to change a catalytic converter, bits and pieces like that. Everything's not in there. Timing chains and tensioners. Everything's not in there, but there's some good articles, and I keep them in my drawer because they're good little reference items. The XK8 is not well served with this sort of thing. So, anybody's wondering if I've got the one and only Haynes manual on these cars that I'm keeping secret? No. We're mainly making this up as we go along, and that's all fine, and I'm enjoying tinkering with mine and sharing what I discover. So there is no secret manual I'm using. Next piece of news. In doing the brakes on the XK8, I decided to examine further. I already knew really what the issue was. Examine further the tyres, and my front tyres were actually brand new when I bought the car. They're not a brilliant brand or anything like that, but they'll serve me for a little while. The rear tyres are shot, and that's going to cost me a fair amount. So in latest news, I'm going to do some research on prices of tyres, obviously UK. What's the best deal you can get on our cars? They are odd sizes. The speed rating and the size together means they're not the easiest things to come by, other than the obvious brands. But my tyres are a good example of why old is just as bad as worn. I'll show you a quick clip of that now. We had lots of good feedback on the inclusion of subscribers' cars on the channel, and we're continuing with that. So thank you very much to everybody who sent in pictures of their cars already. I've got an apology to make. On the end of the first 2020 video, I put in small print on the end page the email address where you could send photos to. And it was pointed out to me by Nicholas, I think, Nicotesis, that I had misspelt my own email address, so hastily had to blur it out. It's an easy one. It is John at tothegarage, all one word, .co.uk. And that's just a good email inbox if you want to send in photos or even a little video clip. If you are going to send a video clip, make sure it's in the landscape format, that way. Don't try and put any sound effects or music on top of it. If there's music, I can't use it. And if you want to speak over it, absolutely fantastic. I can use that, no doubt. But send them in. If you don't want your number plates shown for any reason, then can you please obscure them? Because I've got quite a big inbox of picture files now, and remembering who said to obliterate numbers, who hasn't, it's not going to happen. Most people, it doesn't matter, you can see your cars on the road. I used to obliterate the number plate on PJ on my early videos. That was for very specific reasons connected with private plates that were on that car. And the other two vehicles I obliterate for another reason, which, yeah, it's to do with business and professionalism and all the rest of it. So in the main, showing number plates is giving nobody any grief, but if you don't want yours shown, then please obliterate on the photographs. Oh, and I've had several questions about, with the ramp, the scissor lift you've got, John, which does not do a full height lift. How are you coping with getting around underneath? Are you just crawling around? Is it a problem? Does it give you a backache? So I have answered most of those people, but just to share, I can't go any higher in this garage anyway than this car lift can lift my Jag. So it's kind of a moot point should I have gone higher. No, I can't walk around under it. In fact, sitting on the floor is perfect height. A little higher than that, you start to bump your noggin. But to aid me underneath there, I've got a little toy which I'll show you now. So I've got a simple crawling board, which in the main, because you don't need a crawling board, it's much higher than that. The main reason for having it is I sit on my bum on the crawling board, and I can sliver around underneath the car relatively easily, and I find that very, very useful. And this is quite a nice board. It has an extra feature, and that is if I pull the little pin on the side, it does that. And what that means is I've got a little stool, and for things like the brakes, with the car raised right up as high as it can go, that's perfect sort of head height for me to get inside the wheel arch, and just a great little gadget. So no, I'm still absolutely deliriously happy with the scissor lift, and without changing the entire roof construction on my garage, it's not going to go any higher no matter what I got anyway. So that's how I cope. Okay, so I'm going to obviously change everything on my brake system. So the order in which I do things might not be the best for you, depending on what job you're doing. But with the wheel arch liner out just for filming more than anything, you don't need it out for this job. My first job is going to be to disconnect the flexi hose. Again, I'm going to be refilling the hydraulic system, so leakage is not an issue. And split this off so that I can then look at removing the caliper most easily. So I'm going to disconnect the union using a 13mm spanner and holding the union still a 15mm spanner. So here's where we hope that nothing's frozen on. Yep, that's gone nicely. I thought the pipe might twist off. That would have been bad. The thing to be aware of this job is brake fluid strips your paint. Yeah. So I don't want to be mauling the paintwork with brake fluidy fingers. Okay, so we got that off, so I'm now going to try and release the flexi from its bracket. 15 on the top, 13 on the bottom. Ooh. Because struggling to get the nut off here, yeah. Release that one to swivel that out of the way so we can get a ring on there. What we can't do is grip the bottom because it's corroded quite badly. I think it's turning, yeah, it's turning in the bracket, but that's a start. So both sides are turning. So now I have to resort to splitting the nut on there to free it off. I think I can feel it giving.
Yeah, that's gone. Slipped off.
It's probably still undone. Let me put a spanner on that now. But I can get the open end on it. There you go.
Yeah.
That's done it.
A nice feeling.
Oops.
Size, I think,
well, it's grown. Yeah. The nut has grown now. Well, stage one in this has took longer than I thought it would take to completely strip this side. Yeah. But there you go.
At least it started, didn't it?
Yeah.
You got a ratchet one, John, little bit.
No, socket won't go on. Because
I've got some spanners with rings on them.
I know, but if it goes all the way round, there's a big burr sticking off the nut. It won't go on. So it's got to be an open end to leave the big gap.
That's where it's split.
Because the nut's not hexagonal anymore. Yes!
Oh, you be.
Yay! There we go. Yay! That's original look. Look at the state of it.
Aye.
Corroded away. So, this is probably original. See why we were struggling to hold it on. That one you can't get at because it'll hit the body.
You got an extension from there?
You know, I said I thought it was the bolt breaking loose. No.
What's happened?
Broke the socket.
Oh, blimey. I don't believe that.
I haven't got it on square, I don't think. There you go.
Flattened it.
Not yet. It's rattling it hard though, so we're looking for me little tube. There he is. Undo.
Oh, that's softened him up.
Right, so struggling to get the carrier bolts off the hub. So we're going to take the pins out of the calipers, which are these Allen bolts. They will help us get better access. We can maybe get some lube on the back of the bolt heads. These don't corrode because they've got a nice rubber shroud around them. I'll show you that when we're off. Before we take that all the way off, we need to pull this pin. This just stops the two parts of the caliper rattling against each other. All you need to do is basically lever it out. It's tucked in those two holes there. There's one. There we go. Hold on. That end will come that way. Well, there we go. So with them out of the way, should be able to take the top half of the caliper, the outer part of the caliper off. There we go. Slide pins. I'm just trying to collapse the piston just enough to get the calipers off because there's a lip
We just
worn on there.
this in there, John.
In where?
That got it.
Yeah. Oh. Good pads. Seals come off its mount there. Right, so put him on the bench. And that's the carrier,
Yeah, you can't
just
get
still attached. So now I can get at,
this.
where's my breaker bar gone? Remember last time we broke the socket?
Oh, that's shifted somewhat.
Yeah, let's have a look. Now I'm going to leave that soaking overnight. Now that we've got everything off, just going to squirt everything down on the cart with gunk. We've got our bowl to catch the drips, which contains our 2 elements of the caliper, and they can sit there and stew. These T30 Torx studs that hold the back plate into position are masked by the hub. You can either knock out one of the studs, that's quite hard work, and as I've decided that mine are too well seated to bother with, I've shortened a T30 tool and used this elbow spanner, whatever you want to call it, to get access from behind the hub. If you're able to remove the stud, then you can go through one of the holes. It's not essential to remove the back plate. That's just about me wanting to clean things up, tidy things up, check things out the best as I can. If, like me, you're struggling to get one of these out, little tiny chisel, make a groove on the outside and then use that to turn it. I shan't be putting these bolts back, obviously. Jaguar make quite extensive use of Torx bolts, and I think they're a bit of an unusual choice. Some of it probably down to preventing your average Joe from having a go, because when they came out they were relatively unusual. Some of it down to the concept, at least, that there's more drive area in a Torx than there is in a hex cap head or Allen headed bolt. But
here's what I found.
Ooh, my Apple Watch going off. My own experience is quite to the contrary. Unless they are large diameter Torxes, they're really not such a brilliant idea. I get along fine with the big ones and fine with the very small ones that are basically screws. The rest of them, a bit of a pain. Well, thanks to the wonders of editing, you haven't had to watch the last hour whilst I've been removing these 3 bolts. They are little buggers, and I shall be replacing them with a hex head equivalent. So in future I'll better get a spanner on those. The last thing holding these on is actually a bit hidden. Whoops, a bit hidden, and there are 2 bent over metal tabs that come off a washer on the bottom ball joint. Just bend them back. You should, there we go. Better wriggle that forward, slide it all the way towards the flange, and then you can slide it out. You can see here the tabs that come through the back plate. There we go. Now we can see the last part of the brake system that I want to disconnect and try to clean up. And this is the ABS sensor, the anti-lock braking sensor. It's a little tab here you can lift up and then take the connector off. And that should have a rubber gland in it, the green part. Just tuck him up there. Sometimes your ABS system can fail and it's just that cable which can be disconnected under the bonnet and is a separate item. And the ABS sensor itself is this, and it's bolted into place using that hex head, and it looks through the hub. So I've got myself an 8mm 6-sided socket just to give myself the best chance of taking this off without doing any harm. Again, it's going to need some assistance to get on. There we go. Just good practice. Backwards and forwards a few times. Help the thread out. Because although I can replace the bolts easily enough, I don't want to damage any of the female threads if I can help it. So out comes the bolt. That lead is cable tied up. That's the earth lead, and that goes underneath the arm, upper suspension arm, along here to this, which if I remember was on the bracket for the flexible hose for the braking. And as that's painted and messy, that all needs cleaning up to make sure we get a good contact for earth. So again, if you're having problems with your ABS, it might be as simple as a bad connection here, other end, in this socket, or a dirty ABS sensor, which is quite possible. While we're waiting for the penetrating oil to do its trick, just thought I'd give you a view from the other side. So that's the unit we're trying to get out, and it's just looking through a hole near the connector end, the top end, at that toothed wheel, the reluctor wheel. And as that passes by, it's able to detect therefore the movement of the wheel, and that's how the ABS works out what to do. And with all the parts off, it's now to just start cleaning them up, ready for strip down and refurb. These have been soaking in gunk, so a bit of water added with a brush starts to dissolve anything on the surface, so we can see what we've really got. Right, let's wash that off, go and rinse it. Okay, this is going to be serviceable. It's never going to look like new, but you know, I've managed to get the Jaguar embossed stuff to come through, so there's a lot of good quality metal still left in there. There's no holes, so I'm going to dress that up. So one item out of the way. If you're going to be putting these straight back on, please cover up the ports. I'm going to do a full strip down, so completely irrelevant for this. Okay, so there's all our bits off. Let's have a quick look at them. So we've got our flexi hose, which I had to use a nut splitter to remove. Hasn't damaged the thread, but this wants to go anyway because this upgrade's all about ultimate braking for the standard kit. That's rounded off, not me this time. And the problem with the standard hoses is, although they're good quality, they are rubber, and some of the braking force is definitely going into expanding the rubber rather than just pushing the rod of hydraulics down the tube. So that is for the bin. Brake pads. This shows that my car has been well maintained. These are a set of pads called APEC. Next to no material off them. But they're going to disappear because I'm upgrading. Can see a degree of glazing, and in the material you can see a lot of metallics, and that will be to stop squealing and improve life, not necessarily to improve braking. So they're going to get put in a box as emergency spares unless somebody else wants them. Colour of that clip that lives inside the piston tells you these really haven't been on long. The carrier onto which all the caliper is mounted, there's not a lot to go wrong with that as long as it's not broken, which it never is. So this just needs a thorough clean up, and I'm probably going to try and grit blast that and then maybe put some powder coat on. The caliper itself externally looks quite good, not a lot of corrosion. It's got the rubber bung still on its bleed nipple, which is a good sign. That looks like it's quite well worn. I'll replace the bleed nipple. These rubber boots that protect the guide pins are a little perished, but still intact. I will replace them. The seal around the piston, as you can see, is all over the place. So it's badly fitted on that side, and God knows what's happened at the back there. I hope you can see it. Let's see if you look through this gap. It's a real mess. Now that might just be bad fitment, but that's definitely being changed. Not in where it should be. And the piston, you can see flakes on it. Let's see if I can see that one. That there. Looks like a big burr. It's actually flaking chrome plate. So I'm going to change the pistons. Guide pins are way too nice to be original. These have been changed. Yeah, everything on there, all the marks, wipe off. So they'll be properly cleaned, lubed and put back in. And these pins stop the caliper from rattling on its carrier. And sometimes you have to bend these things to get them off. I've got some new ones, so I'll probably put the new ones on, but there's nothing wrong with these. The back plate has got corrosion on it, but it's not rotted through anywhere. Most of that seems to be paint damage rather than deep damage. So again, I think what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to grit blast it, make sure it looks as good then, and then repaint it. Other than removing the ABS sensor, which is still clinging in there, I'm going to just keep adding some penetrant oil to it, try and take it out without breaking it. The rest of the braking gear is removed. Everything else, having been gunked and brushed down and cleaned up, looks in rather good condition.
Now it's time for Subscribers' Cars.
Today I'm proud to present the 1998 Jaguar XJR or X308 of Mitch Grooms. Mitch is a long-time subscriber to the channel and very much a friend of the channel, and I adore his car. If you're into XK8s, you're going to be into 308s, S-types, all the rest of it. They are the sisters and brothers of the XK8. Beautiful, beautiful cars, very elegant. Mitch's car is in factory new condition. He looks after it beautifully. He's done an awful lot of work on it himself and has an excellent YouTube channel that he uses to share his adventures with the car. Some fascinating adventures trying to save a parts car he bought for it, and shows some of the maintenance and mods that he's done on his 308. I really recommend it. Get over to Mitch Grooms as a YouTube channel and enjoy his channel too. So I'd like to thank everybody who's been sending in pictures of their cars, and it's very much not just XK8s and XKRs. Predominantly yes, but quite a mixture in there, and we're going to share all of these pictures with you. What a great moody shot to finish on. So that completes a front wheel strip down on your brake system. And next time what I'm going to do is show you how to rebuild a caliper and look at dressing, painting, grit blasting, etc. all the components and restoring them back to as new condition to put back on. And then we'll add to that a bit of retest to see how quick the XK8 can be made to stop when it's got a completely upgraded set of brake systems. So, looking forward to your comments. Please give us a thumbs up, please subscribe and share with your friends, and please look at all the other videos that are coming soon where we're going to fit all the goodies I've got from EBC and see just how fast an XK8 can be made to stop on 305mm discs, albeit not the standard discs.